LaTanya West, the managing editor of the Voice of Viewpoint, and the lady that really keeps things going. So we're excited, as you know. We always remind you each week that the Voice of Viewpoint serves all 89 zip codes, 17 cities, unincorporated areas, and some 39 communities in San Diego County. And so this evening we are fortunate enough to have with us the San Diego County District Attorney, Summer Stephan, and Madam DA. Many people don't realize it, but um, I'm going to say this for her. She has a staff of over 1,000 people, and she covers what is one of the largest counties in the state of California, over 4,200 square miles, and that's a lot of area, and there are a lot of people involved. And so she has been a tremendous partner with us over recent years as we have addressed a number of issues. And more specifically, we've given a lot of time and attention to this whole matter of hate crimes, which is a big issue. And we know from statistics and the Attorney General in particular that there are more hate crimes against African Americans than any other group in the state, even though we have all kinds of special programs and we are doing API and reaching out in many directions. And so we started down this path almost 2 years ago with the district attorney, first doing a webinar, and we went into great detail. And the information she gave then was very, very helpful. Then we had a Biscuit, Grits, and Politics meeting last October, and we dealt with hate crimes there, and we asked people as we did it and surveyed them, did they have a better understanding of what a hate crime was because of the phenomenal job that the district attorney did in putting the information together and in a very simplistic form so people could follow it. And so we came back again in July, just last month, and we talked about law enforcement at a town hall meeting. And when we raised the question of did people have a greater understanding of a hate crime, this time we got over a 100% response that people are understanding. We had participation from North County as well, and we have an understanding of hate incidents. And so what we're doing now, Madam DA, we have moved in the direction of trying to talk about solutions and healing and how we can do it. And your staff has been tremendously helpful in terms of making us aware of many of the things that you're doing, which are not only creative, but they put you out in front of the rest of the counties in the state in terms of your approach and the humaneness and compassion of your many efforts. And so before we hear from you, I don't know, Dr. Thompson, if you wanted to say a word as we bring on, and then Ms. West, and then our purpose this evening, Madam DA, is to hear from you in the amount of time that we have. You've been through this as we have. You have had some cases that you pursued, and a lot of significant things have happened. So you can probably just give us kind of a mini report, and maybe you see some of the elements that might be helpful solutions that we might not have reached. And then we'll do the dialogue there because we know your time is limited, and we're trying to compress as much as we can. So that's why I'm going to shut up.
Yeah, so I just want to go ahead and just say let's start because I know
Okay.
there's so much that needs to be said.
Right. Okay, Lantanya, do you have anything?
No.
Okay, so please, the mic is all yours.
Well, thank you so much. Really, Dr. Warren, this is not the first forum that we've had, and I do believe that because of your forums, people are more educated, and knowledge is power. There is no way that people will understand their rights and how to insist on their rights under the rule of law without knowing about them and without knowing what the resources are. So we can't do that alone. As a DA's office, I realized that early on as DA that without partnerships, without trusted community members, we can't get the information out there. And Latanya, it's also an honor to have you on and to know all of the talented ways you've helped make sure information is out there. And of course, Dr. Thompson, it's an honor to be here. So let's kind of begin with a very disturbing premise, but without telling the truth, we can't move past and move towards solutions. And to kind of set the stage for your viewers, hate crimes are an awful thing no matter who they're committed against. However, it happens that consistently the number one target group for haters and hate crimes are our Black and African American communities and people, and way disproportionate to our population. I mean, let me just give you, to kind of ground ourselves in data. If we look at just last year, we prosecuted 30 hate crime cases. That means that these are cases that we could prove beyond a reasonable doubt. We charged a hate crime allegation that the crime was committed because of a hate bias. And almost a full half, despite our much smaller population that is Black African American, 14 of those cases, the victims were Black or African American. So this is, when you look at the population of 5 to 7%, depending where you are in our county, it is, when you're 50% of your cases in hate crimes are targeting one race, um, that means that we have a lot of work to do. Any hate crimes are horrible, but we do have to, as we know, in order to get solutions, we have to also look at the details and address it by community and solution by solution. This is the same for 2022. We prosecuted 21 cases because hate crimes are on the rise. So last year was a very heavy year for us, and 11 of those. So again, 50% or so were targeting our African American communities. And I can go on, but it's pretty much the same year after year since 2017, which is when I started to track this data as DA. And so this is a big issue, and having your forums to be able to inform and educate, I think is already making a difference. Let me tell you why. In 2023, we actually saw generally less hate crime cases being reported, but we still were able to prosecute a very high number of cases that target our African American and Black communities, which means that they had enough trust built to cooperate and to report and to go along the hard walk with us into criminal justice to bring accountability. Some of these cases are really heartbreaking, just a security guard working, minding his own business, and, gets bashed and threatened and called all sorts of things. An image, a mural that depicts someone that is depiction of a Black person gets all sorts of swastikas and, terrible things on it. So passerbys just feel unsafe. The Aryan Brotherhood decides that they're gonna vandalize a business that's Black owned. So, I mean, these cases are reality, they're happening, and we have to continue to fight them. One of the things that I can't promise yet because I'm just embarking on it, but as you'll remember, when we had the increase in the anti Asian hate, the Black and African American community stood strong with the Asian Pacific Islander communities. When they were being blamed for COVID and everything else, just absolutely ridiculous ignorance, as we know, is at the heart of hate crimes. But Congress took action. They passed one of the first things they can actually agree on, and the president signed it, bringing more resources to fight hate crimes against the API, the Asian Pacific Islander community. I just was sworn in as the national president of the District Attorneys Association. So that gives me a voice more nationally to bring some of our best practices and to also address issues of concern to me in Congress. So, one of the things I would like to start a discussion on is how do we bring that same attention and solution to the target group that has been the longest standing target group for hate crimes historically and in present time in our nation. I think that deserves some national attention.
Well, I think you're right, and I'm very appreciative of the fact that when you talk, you say Black and African American, because the African community we have reached out to doing this whole project that we've had will Stop the Hate, and they have many issues, and they're not all divided among religious lines. So it doesn't follow that everyone who's African is Muslim. People are Christian, and many of them are catching issues because they're Muslim, but more so just because of the color of their skin, which is a major issue. So I'm glad that you are inclusive the way you present that, and congratulations on this position. We were anticipating it for quite some time that you would become national president. The question for me becomes, with all of the DAs that we have in the country, there are pockets like the issue that we have here, and then there are places that don't really have it because they don't have the numbers, and so all of that gets to be something to make a difference. But I think what you're giving us is extremely important, and I don't want to hog the time. If there's a question or comment from my colleagues here.
Well, it's very encouraging to hear your interest and attention to focus on the African American community when you have the opportunity. That was one of my questions. What can be done? What might be in the pipeline? Your goals there, but also curious to find out about youth as well, like what you have in place. Just some effective strategies that are working now with that population.
Yeah, Tanya, this is exactly the issue that probably keeps me up at night the most, and it's really important, I think, for any parents out there that are listening, and that's that um, the recruitment to for extremism in our nation, you know, that then kind of builds a generation that are haters and they are, white nationalists and that, want to target Black African American. They want to target people from different religions. They just basically are being raised to hate everybody and to think that this is their call to duty. And this is a phenomena that, with the prevalence of the internet and how irresponsible the internet is in creating algorithms, that if you show some interest as a young person in one area, you're just kind of exploring, you're dabbling, you're not really thinking, I'm going to end up being like a Dylan Roof, where I just had the opportunity to talk to
Yes.
the prosecutors in that case and to understand his mentality and um, what why he did this very hateful act at a Black church. Um, but the internet, it becomes your new parents, and so really becoming educated and being able to interface with kids and have better education and kind of resilience, almost like de-brainwashing about what they're hearing and seeing on the internet, that it's not real. It is just a a group that talks to each other, and they build up these fantasies about being eliminated and having to use violence. So we have to really be educated about it. We have to understand where our kids are going, what they're doing, and I don't mean physically going now. It's where they going on this internet space. And I really believe we need our schools to create a curriculum very specific to internet safety, but not just sexual exploitation, but the internet safety from criminal ideas that dehumanize others and allow for hateful acts by young people, like these shootings, at churches, at markets, where they think a group that they hate might congregate. So these are all of the cases that we've seen in Buffalo, the cases in the churches. So this is a sort of a call to modernize our education. And this is something that we've been talking to the schools about expanding. We've been able to put a lot of good training with regard to human trafficking, with regard to fentanyl, but we don't have something equally as sustainable that the schools are adopting as to explaining hate to kids and explaining the role of the internet in warping their brain into hating their brothers and sisters because of their skin color or religion or whatever it may be.
One
Will
of the
she
things,
appear with you going to mention your program recently?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that we just had a Stop the Hate town hall meeting, and Miss Suing Jones came in and along with Commander Kelso, and they talked to a group of young people about hate and how it's identified. And we started the process because a lot of the Stop the Hate campaigns have centered around the adults and the adult issues. We were commissioned to work with kid programs and have them begin to start talking about that. And we're going to do another town hall soon with that same focus with more young people. My question to you is, with all the different things that are happening within our country, what legislations or what laws do you see coming down the pike that will impact the hate crimes, especially against African Americans and Africans?
But there's nothing really currently, and that's the issue. The good news is California does already have one of the stronger hate crimes laws. That is, it allows for prosecution of a hate crime even if the entire reason for the crime isn't a hate basis, like a robbery that has some of the motive is you want to take the stuff, but the other part of the motive is that you want to hurt this person because of your bias against their race. So we have pretty good laws in California that are not matched around the nation, and that's why some congressional action, similar to what happened with the Asian Pacific Islander, is something I'm interested in pursuing, and already begun the discussions with the National DA's Association to see if we can get an author in Congress to begin expanding, because what laws will do is not only the impact of that you're going to get more time in jail or prison, but it's that it's an opportunity to build awareness and focus and to build law enforcement expertise, and make sure that one of the biggest things that we see when cases don't go anywhere, and they should, is a lack of training, is a lack of expertise within the police departments, within prosecutor offices to recognize what it is. So we built a lot of that training in San Diego, but we continue to sometimes see cases where you have to lift the curtain a little bit. You've got to look at the social media evidence. You have to look at the prior history to really see that this is a hate crime basis and not just a random event. It takes more expertise and more work, and that requires resources and training from the federal and state government. And that's what I'm hoping to see happen.
Well, you've already spent a great deal of time helping people understand how elements from social media, from other contacts can come to play, and to make the case, even though one incident might not seem to be enough by itself. And I think that's important. I guess from our standpoint, it would be a question of is there, because we're coming to near the end with this project that we're doing with the state, is there like one, or are there one or two specific things that you think that we can do more of? Because, you know, when you deal with young people, they already have built-in biases against each other. You know, one kid doesn't want to, they don't want to play with the kid because he's withdrawn or quiet or whatever. And we can outgrow that, but then we have adults that get into the picture with the behavior. Like we've seen instances where some of the Muslim girls have been the victim of harsh statements from school administrators because of their dress, as opposed to having support from the administration. So is there, would you have like one or two particular things as we are trying to figure out what else we can do next that might come to mind?
Well, I think what Dr. Thompson referred to, which is to have a specific focus on youth and youth forums and youth understanding. The issue is that it needs to be systemized, right, within school systems and after school programs so that
Right.
it is on remote control. Because otherwise, it's very important to reach as many as possible. But if you systemize it like you do math and science, understanding that this is the challenge of today, that kids are getting warped their mind by false messaging on the internet that is going to derail their future and potentially derail the future of innocent bystanders and victims, then it can become a priority. So taking the work you've already done and then coming together with my office, with other people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and work and see how we can systemize it within the school systems so that children are getting these messages not just once but often as part of their curriculum building. And then the other, I would say, is to not give up, to really encourage reporting. And I know you've done that in big time. And even if one case doesn't go anywhere, what it does is it provides a history, a historical context. I can tell you for certain that there's been cases where we hated to not go forward on them, but sure enough, a year later, the person is doing something similar, and now you put a weak case with another so-so case, and you're building an actual accountability, and you're building a case, and we've done that. And so reporting is really important to not have our community give up on reporting. Report it, log it, have it become a part of the history that we and context that we can evaluate future cases upon.
One of the things that you were talking about is a systematic change within the school system. And I always laugh because when we talk about a systematic change, they think that we have to build it from ground zero. But we can take what's existing already. We already have the history classes. If we go and look at the government classes, all of those classes can have an element of how hate has affected our society as a whole. The biggest thing is to get the students to start talking about it. And when they begin to start talking about it, we can teach more about it. So it's not really to have to build a brand new system. Use the current system and infuse, like they say, the new math, the new language that we need to make sure that our kids are learning. And I agree with you 100%. We have the resources already. All we have to do is build the curriculum within the curriculum that already exists.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. That resonates so much because that obviously takes less money, less change, which is very difficult. But it is about updating our education to the real challenges of today, which will allow students to face the challenges of today with real knowledge. So yeah, I think that's something that we should go to work on to expand. The forums you've had with our community partnership prosecutor Cheryl Suing Jones and Captain Kelso, expand those to include them in curriculum.
And can I just ask, what kinds of details for the youth and adults, even parents, who have experienced hate, what types of details should they include when they're reporting? Because it may be obvious to some, but not to others. So what do you need to know, you know?
So for a hate crime, you need a crime to be committed, and it can be anything: vandalism, assault, pushing somebody, spitting on someone. One egg was throwing eggs at some African American people. It can be as simple or something much more severe, like a stabbing and a shooting, a robbery, a crime with a hate bias, a bias against race, religion, ethnicity, disability, gender, or sexual orientation. Those are the protected classes. But how do you show a bias? We don't have a microfiche of somebody's brain. So the observations we want people to make are: what words were used? What epithets were used? What was there any other intent, background, or conflict between these two people? Or was it just something that happened because you happened to be there and you were a certain color and this person was a different ethnicity or color or orientation? So all of those details, and then of course, without putting yourself, if you're a witness bystander, in harm's way, take down license plates, because believe it or not, hate crimes are mostly committed by strangers. They're not like domestic violence or human trafficking that's committed within families. It is by a stranger. So identification is often a very big thing in solving the case and in getting to a solution. So as many details that identify tattoos, identify certain features, identify cars, license plates, all of that information is extremely valuable. And remember, for people out there, you don't have to be right. So long as in good faith you're reporting what you observed or saw. What you felt was that something hateful, a hate crime was happening. It may not be correct. There may be other background that you don't know about, but so long as you're reporting what you saw in good faith, you could be wrong about it, but you wouldn't get in trouble.
And it's anonymous. People can report anonymously or,
I could never promise that anonymity. There are apps like Crime Stoppers. If you report there, there is an app for kids. It's called Student Speaking Out, that we use all the time to interrupt school threats, that is anonymous. There are different platforms that are anonymous. If you call a police line, I can't promise that that's anonymous, but you can request anonymity, and we try to do our best to build the case outside of you, so that we don't need to use your testimony, but just use it as background lead. But we can't assure that.
Well, Madam District Attorney, time is always our enemy when we do this, and we really do appreciate hearing from you. My last observation is this week the governor was really pushing hard for the banning of cell phones in schools. And I know that's kind of a catch-22 because in the scenarios where we've had school shootings, many times it was the cell phone that allowed parents to hear communication from the inside. So we're not quite sure how it's going to work. But we want to come back to you again. We want this to be an ongoing process so that we can continue to do these meetings. And we welcome your releases that we get from you. We're trying to encourage the community to become more visible in terms of sitting in on some of these trials so they can understand, or even moving in the direction of more jury service, which helps when we have more people that look like the victims in terms of what's taking place. And so we want to thank you for being with
yes,
us.
thank you.
And also want to say thank you to your entire staff, especially Ms. Suing Jones, always very accessible to the community. And I think that is so important that we might not always be able to get to you, but your staff has been very approachable. And we just want to say thank you for allowing them to be available.
Yes,
Oh,
you have a
it's
comment?
our entire honor as a team to work with you and to build those bridges and that trust that allows everybody to be safe. Thank you so much.
We're going to keep, and congratulations again. Don't be
Yes.
afraid to share some of the press releases at the national level because we're in touch with some 240 black media outlets around the country. So I'm sure we have people with papers that are in the areas that you're going to be over. And we look forward to being supportive.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Madam DA.
All right.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Well, that was a very, very good interview, and I want to thank uh, uh, our DA for being here. And you know, we're not stopping. It's going to be
Yeah.
a jam packed day today. So we're going
Yes.
to have
Yep.
our
I can
next.
switch.
Yeah, we'll do a switch right quick. Yeah.
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 We'll put you over here.
All right.
Okay.
So, as you guys know, I'm going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to go right back into another great interview right here on GODRadio1.com.
The San
All
Diego
right.
Voice and Viewpoint newspaper is San Diego's oldest and largest African American publication. We bring you news for and about our community. Your stories matter to us. Thank you for allowing us to serve you for nearly 6 decades. Your support enables us to continue to forge ahead, informing you with news tailored to your needs. In addition to subscribing to our weekly publication, consider using Voice and Viewpoint to promote your business and events. Call us at 619-266-2233 or send an email to ads@sdvoice.info for details on how to get started. If you have advertising needs, contact us. Our prices are both fair and reasonable. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Voice and Viewpoint or visit our website at www.sdvoice.info. Remember, a people without a voice cannot be heard.
All right. Well, thank you. We're ready to move to the next segment here. Time goes so fast when we're, as they say, when we're having fun, okay? And so we are just honored to have Professor Jojo Ramirez here with us from Southwestern College. And he's very much involved with the API Coalition. He's been present at our town hall meetings. He's had tremendous contributions as we've talked and done surveys and communication, and is ongoing. And so you're joining us this evening. Remember Ms. West, which is our managing editor, Dr. Thompson here, who is always there when we're doing these programs. And we are very appreciative of you taking time to be here, because sometimes we have issues trying to bring all of our communities together.
Yes.
Okay, and so we've had an exciting year. You've been involved with us as we've moved through so many things. And we're now at the point as we're winding down where we're beginning to look at what kind of things have you drawn from what we're doing, or are there things that we can do better as we move forward? And we'd like to just give you a few minutes to talk to us about how you see what is going on, because you're here and you've given your time, and we want to hear from you.
All right. Again, hello. My name is Jojo, or Professor Jojo, my students call me. I think a lot of things that's been happening in the county around working with different coalitions, working with different communities. It's never the perfect place, right? But it's a great place to start.
Okay.
A lot of it happens, and a lot of the things that I like to do is kitchen table activism happening in small communities. What does it mean to break bread and have those hard discussions, even within, as a professor, happening in the classrooms? What are the things that are not being addressed? What are the things that are being in the periphery that we could put in the center and have that hard conversation about, what are the things that hurts us? What are the things that motivates us? What are the baggages that we have? What are the things that we can look forward to in the future? And it's always going to be a work in progress. And I think that's what coalition and community building looks like.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned in the classroom, because we were just trying to talk about classrooms, and we've been giving more attention to what's happening with young people.
Yes.
And are there some particular experiences that you've had at Southwestern? Because Southwestern has had, it is getting better, but it was a hotbed of a lot of racial issues in the past 7 or 8 years, and so much so that you had to bring in a consulting group from LA to really work up a blueprint and a plan to start doing things a little differently. So how has you've got a new administration, you got new board members, you got all these new players that are involved. Have you seen that impacting the classroom or the experience that was there and that is ongoing?
Well, this is my third year, so I'm
Okay.
coming to my third year this 2 weeks in 2 weeks. But I think a lot of progress has been happening, particularly with our learning communities. We have our Umoja Puente, our CHEL for the LGBT community. We have our Sangam for predominantly API and Bayan. And now we're working with our first year programs, our veterans programs, as well as now we just started our Men of Color initiative. And so we've realized that particularly Black, Latino, and Filipino and Pacific Islander male students are not, graduating or not exceeding the same amount as other communities or particularly women of color. And so we're really passionate about making sure that we're supporting those students not just get their associate's degree, but also imagine what it means to get like a bachelor's degree or higher.
Well, can you tell us more about the Men of Color initiative? Because
Yes.
that has to be rather profound at Southwestern, considering the demographics of the place.
Well, and I also think
Yeah.
that it's important when he goes through that it's just not a local initiative, but
Yeah.
it's a statewide initiative.
Oh, it
so
is.
multiple colleges are from San Diego, including
Okay.
ECC, and all of them are doing the same.
The same thing.
Yes.
Okay, great.
So we're just starting. We just had our first programs. We just hired our new director and program coordinator and counselor, and so we're still imagining what that would look like. And we're predominantly focusing on the students who are
Okay.
first generation college students who are coming from low economic backgrounds, recent immigrants, or refugee communities. Just making sure that they find a place, but that success is measured by them as well, not just by the standards of the state and the college.
Okay. Dr. Thompson, because
Yeah,
you're
and I do know that, like you said, you're still imagining it because every school is going to take a part of the initiative, but then design it specifically for their area. Being that your demographic is mainly Latino and Hispanic in your area, there are few or less of a population of African American,
Yes.
but yet and still there is a tremendous amount of young African American men that do go to your college. Kudos to your college because they're one of our schools that we have mentors that come to this organization and be trained. And several of our team members are actually were hired on full time from Southwestern College. The question I would ask is that as you begin to move forward and you look at the disparity of the different populations, how do you make it equal playing ground? And what I mean by that is that there are sometimes that I see other populations, because they're larger, get way more attention, way more levity than, say, for instance, a smaller population like African and African American. How do we balance the field that everybody's getting kind of like equal access and equal opportunity?
I think it's both equality and equity. So I want to make sure that even the population might not be as big as the Latino or Latino communities, they're getting the resources when it comes to the learning centers, the learning communities. We have our organizations. I know we had our Ghana trip, and we're thinking about how we can support them to go to other parts of the country or even outside of the country. We hired Brother Shabazz as the new African American Studies professor that's leading up and reimagining what it looks like to have Black studies on campus. And so a lot of these new initiatives coming from the new president in particular really wants to concentrate on the local community, but also having the local community and local, particularly the students, imagine first what they want in the higher education and let us figure out what that equality or equity looks like. But also staying away from that framework and seeing what justice looks like for those who have been more marginalized than others.
I love the key word that you said, going to the students and hearing their voice to help shape what the future looks like.
Yes.
I'm just curious about the kitchen table discussions. What does that look like, and how do you create the safe environment for people to have those hard conversations, and what does the makeup of those kitchen table discussions look like?
So I actually...
And when you answer that, I want to know what's on the table too, because I know
Yeah.
it has to be some nice stuff on the table.
Yeah. I actually was, before going to Southwestern College, I was at UC San Diego, and I was mentored by Dr. Edwina Welch, and we read a lot about Ella Baker and kitchen table activism, and sort of the activism that happens when we just have conversations, right? The systemic issues will always be there. The institutional stuff that we have to change and fight for and against will always be evolving. But times it's always going to be, what is our conversation going to be like with each other? And I tell my students too, because there's not all my students in my Asian American Studies class are Asian American. I have a good amount of other community members, and I tell them, like, what are the conversations happening at home? Like, how can you take the theory that we're taking in class, even though it's Asian American, around family, around culture, around things that are not talked about, and bring it back to your place, bring it back to your homes, and say, like, how am I addressing the social inequalities of the world with my younger cousin, with my siblings, right? And at the same time, allow them to also have that hope of imagining a different tomorrow.
Now, one of the things that I do is at the kitchen table is I say, ask any question you want to ask.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you came in here today and I see, and I don't want to call it a sash.
Oh,
I
yeah.
want you to tell me what it is, you know, because the funny thing is I can see that, and I can see how in the African culture they have something very
Mm-hmm.
similar. So my question is, you know, even with tattoos, there's the Americanized tattoos,
Yes,
but
yeah.
then there are also cultural tattoos. So those are the questions that I love to ask at the table because it affords us to know deeper about the culture and the people that we're talking about. So I just want, for my own sake, I just want to know what this is officially called.
So I'm from the Philippines, but it's really complicated also because I'm an indigenous person. So one of the things I teach my students is that what we think of racial construct in the U.S. doesn't necessarily mean or equate elsewhere. So I'm an indigenous minority there. I'm Filipino by nationality, but not by culture per se. So for us, we call this sablay, which is just a way of modesty to cover usually our left or right shoulder, but I usually cover my left.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I think you made a very important point because a lot of people don't realize the multiplicity of cultures that are in the Philippines
Yes.
as a result of the history of the Philippines. Some people just make the association with the Spanish component, but it goes way beyond that.
Yes, yeah.
And so that's very important. But one of the observations I want to make is you're speaking, my mind is going back to the growth that's taking place at Southwestern. I mean, the campus has expanded exponentially. It's been just tremendous in terms of the new buildings there, the pool, the gym, the libraries,
stadium.
it's just
Yeah.
everything. But you also have something else. You have a campus in National City,
Yes.
okay? And that's very important because National City is so Latino in its makeup that many refer to it in the state as a sanctuary city. And so I would imagine from what I've seen, the efforts that we're talking about in terms of overcoming some of the biases and issues that have been associated with the college would be even a little more difficult there. So has there been an experience in terms of inclusiveness from that campus standpoint? Because that campus is physically removed,
Yes.
but yet it's still very much a part. Everything about the building and the facility makes it very clear that it's Southwestern.
Yeah.
So can you speak to it?
So I'm not as attached to that, but I know the
Right.
communities that work with it. So we also have our San Isidro and Otay Mesa campus. A lot of the folks that I know that I've been working with, and locally some of the professors that are connecting with, is the more recent African communities that are coming into National City,
Oh, okay.
which is very different also from the what we would presume to be the Black or African American experience coming in predominantly Muslim, refugee or political asylum in the region coming and
Okay.
taking those classes. So I think one of the things that we also, and this is more of a national debate and a national issue that I have, is how do we address those two different communities that are sort of racialized as Black in the United States? That there are those who come from historical backgrounds of enslaved folks going through antebellum and all of those 1960s racism, and then those who are just recently coming from Africa, from even Central and the Caribbeans, having a different form of Black experience in the United States, but being racialized as both, right? And those are just sort of the pushbacks that we're having from even the students who are saying, like, well, I'm actually Nigerian, I'm Ethiopian. And I'm like, yes, what does that mean for you to be part of a community then? And also addressing the sort of the inequalities that are happening with the overall Black community when at times, this is something you've probably seen in many four-year institutions, the more richer African folks would come in and sort of be part of the international student population, and then sort of juxtaposed against the Black community who are less than 1%, right? Who are getting the financial aid, who are in different needs when it comes to parents who probably went to college, when their parents are in the Caribbean or in Africa who have doctorate degrees and they're sending their students here. So I think those are always the hard conversations that folks are having of when you get clumped up together with recent communities, immigrants, historical communities, and then those who are used by numbers to just add on because they are international. And it's across the board with different communities. We've critiqued other UC systems who get, when they say, oh, there's 40% Asian population. Then we say, okay, what's the Asian American population? Oh, it's actually less than that, way less than that. But they're getting folks coming in from Asia to get the numbers up because they're international, they would pay more.
Okay, well, we also have an issue where, we've had people coming from other countries, from Africa, Haiti. They were coming in through the San Ysidro border. On any given morning, if you're at the border early there, you can see a tremendous influx of students coming from Mexico into the U.S. to go to school. And then you have the issue with the trolley because, I've watched many times, I've seen immigration there stopping the trolleys between San Ysidro and National City. The National City is a major line in terms of breakoffs there. So have you noticed any particular elements of complaints among the diverse groups there? Because I mean, we've kind of jumped around, but even though we have this Hispanic foundation, and you mentioned the other groups, have you seen any particular scenarios that we should be looking at?
I don't think there's a lot of on that. I mean, the different communities, at least within the college level, amongst students, are very cohesive, very collaborative, collegiate. I think a lot of those conversations tend to go higher than the students, and even sometimes higher than administration and more of the local politician levels.
Well, you had faculty issues there, and black faculty had big issues there. A number of them filed lawsuits against it. Has the number of black faculty gone back up since the study, or is it continuing to diminish?
That I don't have the data or information.
I mean, do you see more? Do you see?
I think I see more black faculty more engaged on campus. I
Okay.
know particularly with the learning communities, our new African American Studies program. That's very much. It's not really new, but sort of like revamping
Okay, so
itself.
you do see additional faculty there.
Yeah, a little bit more active with the students
Okay.
now, and more with campus
Okay.
environment.
And there have been some outreach programs going on. I know Irma Velasco, who comes from UC San Diego, used to work
Yes.
with the chancellor. She's now doing some work there at Southwestern, and it's outreach in terms of getting people to come in as a part of that rehabilitation program that came out of the study. So you're seeing an increase in the number of students, black and African American.
I see more the student population when it comes to programming. So again, I'm more within our sort of field of study. There's a lot more with those students who are taking African American studies or
Okay.
ethnic studies as a whole, and then we have our learning communities who are increasing by numbers. Who are, we only have one course or one program, and there's students who really want to be part of that, but we can
Right.
only hold like 30 students at a time. And so
Wow.
we've noticed now that there is more demand in need for particularly supporting men of color as part of that initiative. So we had to sort of create a new program that's just the Umoja program, which concentrates on the overall Black African American community,
Okay.
and then we have one for for men of color.
I was just listening to all the things you were sharing, and my mind keeps going back to the differences between the African students, the African American students, black students, and also these difficult kitchen conversations where hopefully there's the dialogue about the interracial issues that come up, either with African and black students, African American and black students, or Asian and black. Are you seeing any of that is being worked out, I guess, or resources for that, or safe spaces to talk about those issues, because we know they exist.
I think it's always going to exist, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's always going to be the hard conversations of what does it mean to be in conversation, coalition, and being community when you're in front of each other, and it's totally different when you're outside of that space, right? And so I always, like, for me, one of the things that I'm very passionate about when it comes to my class, when I teach Asian American studies, is I tell them I can't teach Asian American studies without knowing Black history, without talking about enslavement, without talking about colonization and imperialism and all of that. That's part of the U.S. history that allows Asian Americans to actually exist, the erasure of Native Americans and the enslavement of African bodies, right? And so what does that mean when we don't address that? That means we're doing an injustice to the field, and we can't have that conversation that we exist here because someone had, and a community had to struggle prior.
That's
Okay,
important. It's important.
it is indeed. Dr. Thompson, because you're the educator in the group.
Well, one of the things that, how can we as a community, as educators, help with the movement that is taking place at Southwestern College? I attended, I think, a summer and one semester at Southwestern College many years ago, and I've seen the growth in the facility. I always say it feels like a college now. It feels like a place of higher learning. When I went there, it was in the process of becoming that. And so, how can we as community people, educators, and concerned citizens continue to help with your efforts?
I think the community is very important in that conversation. And we can't survive as a college, as an institution of higher learning, if the community is not in conversation with us. And for me as an educator as well, as someone who teaches ethnic studies is not about being stuck in books and classrooms and papers and assignments. If you cannot take what you've learned and theorize it and also connect to the people outside of the classroom, then that's not ethnic studies. You've learned, and I'm not trying to be mean to the field, but that's just history at that point, right? Ethnic studies means being in community, being for community by community. So when we say, what does the community want in our classrooms? It literally means what are the important topics and understandings that the students need to also understand. Not getting stuck too much in the past, referring to the past as monumental way to say that that's our foundation, but never getting stuck there. What does the future look like? What does it mean, let's say, for students of color, Black men on campus, folks who are marginalized, to think about a Southwestern or even a San Diego that doesn't just include them, but also has their name, has their histories, has their stories.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So when you walk on the campus, and I haven't been there for quite some time, but when you walk on the campus, do students see themselves? Do they see themselves in how the campus is built? What statues or architecture or what pictures are floating around? Do they get to see themselves as they walk through the campus? Or is it still kind of sterile and more of the same that they've always seen?
I think that's a great project that we're thinking about. Like, what are the community arts? I know we have a new student center that's being built as we speak right now. Hopefully, we don't know construction and how that works, but hopefully to start in the spring semester. And a lot of that conversation is like, how do we bring in community art in there, making it, or even the students' art. We have the different learning communities. They have their own little sort of mini classrooms that's going to be there. And one of the things that we're hoping that will be in the future is that those students will create their own art for their own community.
Well, that's amazing to me when you said new student center, because I always thought that the one that existed was phenomenal. It was a very relaxed atmosphere. And you saw the students kind of hanging out there. There were places to sit and things to do. So I always thought that in itself was very special. But one of my concluding questions would be, since you've participated with us through our Stop the Hate project, is there anything in particular that you can take away from our efforts that's been of help to you in terms of your work? Because that helps us understand if we're really doing what we're trying to do, since we're covering such a broad area.
I brought it up to some of my students, and that when it comes to these sort of very violent spaces, that not just hate but complete violence, it's gonna be there. So not necessarily thinking about the safe space that many folks want, but more so like, how can you be brave about your identity? How can you be like, I will struggle through this and be better and do good for my community? Because if, for me, and this is, again, I don't want people to think that, this is what, like completely the theoretical framework for it, but for me, safety sometimes means closure. My safety means I will not step out of my comfort zone And if I see an injustice, I'm just going to say that's hate. No, you say it's hate and you do something about it. You work with that community. You work with that individual, and sometimes the most basic form of acknowledgement of hate when it comes to someone getting that form of violence is even just asking their name. Acknowledging their existence itself is powerful enough
Very
that it can
powerful.
say, I have a name. I'm not just a statistics. I'm not just a picture. I'm not just the data that's being circulated around. I have a name. I have a story. I have a history. And this is the pain. And I'm happy and I'm blessed that you shared your name minimally to me. And now how can I help you and empower you to be brave to share your pain and your struggle?
Well, with that, the name, I always ask the question, I don't want to call you nickname. I don't want to call you, if your name is something, I don't want to call you Bobby. And I always tell students that I don't care how many times I got to say your name over and over and over again. Until I get it right, I need for you to teach me. And I think that lets them know that you care enough about them to know their name versus just saying, I'm going to make it easy on myself.
Yeah.
I'd rather take the difficult of trying to enunciate a name and getting it right than just to shorten a name and not respecting that they were given a birth name. Yeah, so I agree with you on that.
Well, I hear the passion. I mean, you are just bringing it on. I can tell you're just so committed to creating solutions and empowerment for the students that you serve. It's really, really nice to hear. It's very inspiring, actually. So what would you say to a new student just coming onto campus? Like, where would you recommend that they go first?
So it's interesting because I actually teach an array of students. I also teach at the high school. So I teach ethnic studies at the high school. I also teach online, and we're going to soon move to in-person at Donovan for incarcerated individuals. That for me, when it comes to the classroom setting, is always going to be fluctuating. So again, if you're thinking about like the physical campus for those who just recently graduated or returning, I think I always say look for the community centers. Look for the campus community center, like either the cross-cultural center or the student, services center. Find your community first, because if you have that community, you'll have the resources to tell you, well, this is where you're actually supposed to be going, right? I, as a non-Black person, cannot, give the resources to a Black student, but I can tell them this is where you should be going to. This is the resources where you can, the Black faculties will support you. I am here as an ally, and for me, as an ally means I am not an ally at the same time. I am given the term ally by the community I support, and I can lose it like that, right? And so what does it mean for me to prove myself to Black students, to marginalized students, and be like, this is what an allyship looks like? Let me be an ally too. If you think I'm an ally, sure, and I will guide you to the resources that can better, give you a better experience on campus.
So you have to slide them that voice and viewpoint and say, this is your starting point.
Well, starting point for me is always starting point with yourself.
Yeah.
First, you need to know and like this is the whole different gambit on it too. Is like you're in a 2-year community college experience, which already has a whole stigma and baggage attached to it, right? Versus those who are going straight to SDSU or UCSD or a 4-year institution. What does it mean for you to find and root yourself first in yourself and then connect to where you need to connect?
Well, let me say in conclusion, and Professor Ramirez, we are pleased to have had you with us this evening. I think the things that are happening at Southwestern have given the whole concept of a community college a really big boost, okay? Because when you have programs like the sheriffs and the law enforcement entities, their certification programs involve them being enrolled there at the school. You can see them on the campus on the weekend going through. So you got people in professions that are using those schools as a part of their professional training, and I think that's important. And I just love all the stuff that's happened there. I mean, the Voice and Viewpoint's been on the campus for at least 20 years, and just watching the buildings grow and come up and the filling in of all that land and space has just been phenomenal. And seeing the attitude of the students there, I mean, many of them just have no idea how fortunate they are in terms of what they have today compared to what it was before in the days of Dr. Thompson, when it's, they probably had candle lights out there instead of lanterns and stuff.
We were riding horses.
Yeah,
Yes.
hitching rails. Okay.
And I think that's the thing. It's back. Many folks would say it's a junior college. You can't have a community college if the community's not there
Yeah.
to not just guide the institution, but to also be the voice with and for the institution.
Well, we appreciate you coming in and sharing with us. And I wonder if there are any concluding comments from my colleagues here. We're going to maintain our communications
Yes,
with you,
yes.
and we're looking forward to having you again as we continue, because we're not going to just stop with the end of this project. It's going to be an ongoing thing for us.
Well, that is from the desk of the editor right here on GOD Radio 1. We want to thank you so much. We're going to ask that you make sure that you download and get your app for The Voice and Viewpoint, as well as please get this week's newspaper. Check out the editorial by Dr. John Warren. It says, Race Stronger Than Criminal Conviction and Indictments. I want you to check that out. And until next week, y'all be blessed.
Be blessed. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Oh,
you
that
so
was
much
great.
for the opportunity.
Thank you.
I'm fired up.
Hold on.